there'll be lots more to come, and I'm very excited about these lightning talks to help us think a little bit from multiple perspectives about grading. We all have different experiences with grading, both as receivers of grades and givers of grades, and our various roles. I personally remember one of my favorite high school teachers, as she turned our first papers back, assessed with a somewhat firm hand. She made the point of saying, look, you know, if you got a grade you don't like on that paper, that's not you. You're not a C, and you're not a B or an A, and she would act this out. And that was important for us to remember. We are not the grades that we receive, yet they carry a lot of weight and importance, especially if you were in a track and you were shooting for an elite college like the University of Michigan. Grades seem to carry an outsized importance, even when I was in high school. And I think that's become even more true for high school students today, and it has carried through to our college-age learners as they are looking beyond college to see what comes next. And we'll hear today some perspectives from a cross-section of faculty, students, staff, folks, somebody who represents work in the outside world, and you can see their names in a very brief title of who they are in your program for the day, but I'll introduce each one briefly as we invite them up. These are lightning talks. No PowerPoint, no slides. We've given each speaker 7 minutes, and I would direct the speakers as you're standing up here to pay a little bit of attention here to Melinda Matney, who will be timing you, and there'll be a giant hook that comes off at the end to yank you off the stage at 7 minutes. We did a scientific study of faculty lectures, and we determined 7 minutes, that's enough. We gave each speaker a prompt, the same prompt, but it varies a little bit depending on their position. The general prompt is, what I really wish I knew about student learning or accomplishment is ... And if you're a learner, that prompt is flipped a little bit. What I really wish people knew about my learning or accomplishment is ... And with that, we'll get started to hear from the first of our speakers, Meghan Duffy, who is an associate professor in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. She teaches intro courses for ecology and evolutionary biology, and in her words, gives out a lot of grades. And as someone who's very involved in the admissions process, she also considers a lot of students' grades. She's committed to public engagement and outreach, and in her online bio, she indicates that she is, quote, happy to speak with reporters, which makes one of us. But I will invite you up to share your 7-minute lightning story about grading with us. Meghan?
Okay, thank you. I have my timer to keep this lightning. Okay, so hello, and what I really wish I knew about student learning is what opportunities a student has had, what skills they've developed, what a student has done with the opportunities they've been given, and what opportunities they've created for themselves. So I was asked particularly to speak as a member of a grad admissions committee, but as Barry just said, I also give out a lot of grades. So I teach intro bio here, and we have about 550 students. And so I do, in a few weeks, I'll be assigning a whole lot of grades. I also regularly evaluate potential students, both as a member of a grad admissions committee, but also I have 8 undergrads working in my lab right now, plus 4 graduate students. And so I think about this topic both as someone who gives grades and then as someone who evaluates a lot of transcripts. So some of what I want to know is the basic stuff that is partially covered by current transcripts. I want to know about what sorts of classes a student has taken. Have they been exposed to ecology and evolutionary biology? Have they taken quantitative courses? But I also want to know about what opportunities students have had. Did they challenge themselves with their classes? Did they take the easiest path to a degree? And I especially want to know about what they learned in the classes that they did take. Did they ever have to analyze a figure showing data they'd never seen before? Did they learn how to read and evaluate primary literature? Did they have to take information from different sources and evaluate how reliable that information was and synthesize it into a coherent argument? Did they learn how to write scientifically? Have they ever designed an experiment or analyzed data? So right now, I can tell from a transcript what courses a student took, but it's really impossible to know what was expected of them in those courses. And to explain some more about this from my perspective as an instructor, in some intro bio courses, a student getting an A means that they're really good at taking in a whole lot of information and memorizing it and then spitting it back out. But my course emphasizes higher order thinking, and so I expect students to be able to apply concepts they've learned about to novel scenarios. On an exam, I will give them a figure of data that they've never seen before that comes from a scientific manuscript, and I will expect them to interpret that information using the concepts they've learned in class. And so right now, if someone looks at the transcript and the letter grade that a student received in my course, they don't know if it means that they're really good at memorizing or if they're really good at applying concepts and thinking, constructing new knowledge. And so right now, the only way someone knows that is if I write a letter of recommendation for a student. And occasionally I have students ask me for this, and this is hard to do in a class with 550 students. I mostly don't get to know students very well. But sort of an advantage of the current state of our transcripts is that I can actually spend a paragraph or so just explaining the course and what's expected of a student, and that I need to do that in a letter of recommendation to tell what a student learned in my course, I think reveals a real shortcoming that we have to our current transcripts. When I'm evaluating applicants to our graduate program, I also want to know about what else was going on in the student's life. Were they working 30 hours a week? Were they caring for a parent or a sibling or a child? Did they run a dog training business on the side? Right? Did they have some other major responsibility that was taking up their time? And part of that is because I've found that if a student was able to take courses and do reasonably well, get some research experience, and then have some other major time commitment, that shows me that they have really good time management skills and they're really good at persevering. And that's some of the most important skills for succeeding in graduate school and in science. And I think there is a lot of talk now about perseverance or grit or whatever you want to call it, but I think that's for good reason. And so I can think of one recent applicant who was really impressive because she had gone to a summer research experience that seemed like it would be amazing, and then she got there and it was just totally different than what she expected. But she was able to take those lemons and make lemonade, and it really showed that she could deal with hiccups and what was really a major hurdle and still come out, learning from that experience and getting something out of it. And that really spoke a lot. But that was something that didn't come from a transcript, that came from her letters of recommendation especially, and then also from personal statements. And as a grad admissions committee member, I'm asked to compare applicants with extremely diverse experiences, and I really struggle with this aspect of sitting on a graduate admissions committee. So I can think of one case where we had an applicant who had gone to Harvard, had research experience, and was a co-author on a publication. That seems like a pretty sure bet. But there was also a student who had gone to a small regional college who had, it seemed, taken advantage of every single research opportunity she had at that college. But her research statement was about the one time she got to use a centrifuge. And so this was just a very different level of experience. And there's nothing to say that she's any less promising than the student who went to Harvard. She just had different opportunities. So in that case, I didn't really have a way to evaluate what she had learned in her classes. I could see she'd taken a lot of classes and had done well, but I didn't have a way to learn. But then I can think of another applicant who had gone to a small college, and she had, as part of a project, part of a program she did there, she had synthesized the literature and proposed novel research. And it wasn't something that she went on to go and do, but it showed me she had those skills. She was able to think deeply about problems, and she was able to sort of see novel paths forward. And in some cases, I think it's these students who are coming from less traditional backgrounds, the ones who didn't go to Harvard, who can see really interesting new areas for us to do research in. And so I would love to have a better way of capturing their knowledge. And then what I want to end with is just that I think one advantage also to not just having a single grade and instead to focus on proficiency is I think it could really reduce student stress. And this is something that our next speaker will talk about more. But I think if students have many opportunities to show that they have a skill or a proficiency, that would reduce a lot of the stress that our students currently experience when they have to perform on a certain day at a certain time. So to summarize, the things I want to know about student learning are, yes, I want to know about what classes a student took, but more I want to know about what was expected of them in those classes. What skills do they have? And I mean both the academic skills, like writing and analyzing data, but also things more in the realm of life skills, like time management. And then I want to know what opportunities they had, how hard they had to work for those opportunities, and whether they made the most of them. Thank you.
That was a great way to open. Thank you very much. And as Meghan indicated, we're about to hear from a student who has some experience in the area that Professor Duffy teaches in. Morgan Rondinelli is a student in Ecology, Evolution and Biodiversity, and she's also a part of the LS&A Honors College. And if you want to see a demonstration of how an undergraduate takes an activity that is high stakes, extremely challenging, very public, and yet does not receive a grade or show up on a transcript, then I encourage you to go see Morgan perform in the Nutcracker this holiday season with the Ann Arbor Ballet Theater. And with that, Morgan, would you come join us on stage and share your lightning talk with us?
When someone looks at my transcript, they see mostly A's. It looks like near-perfect grades. But that document that reduces 5 years into a series of letters leaves off something important. It's invisible, and you wouldn't see it unless we had a conversation separate from my transcript. It leaves off all that went into those grades and all that happened in my 5 years at Michigan. What I really wish other people knew about my learning and accomplishment was that it wasn't easy. I'm good at faking that it was, but the near-perfect transcript deceptively hides how truly difficult achieving those grades were. Only a handful of professors truly know what else happened when trying to achieve those grades. It started during my freshman year. It was a huge transition, moving away from home and starting college, as it is for so many. I had already been stressed and perfectionistic in high school, but college provided the perfect environment for that to flourish. I developed several more irrational fears than what I already had, such as a fear of starting a fire, so I would tap the light switch several times before leaving the room. I was afraid of forgetting important information, which led to hoarding stacks of Post-it notes of nonsensical lists. I even doubted my ability to read and feared that I wasn't fully understanding material, so I would spend hours rereading the same material over and over, essentially making it near impossible to get through reading assignments. The summer following my freshman year, I finally figured out that this was OCD and was fortunate enough to start targeted treatment. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't enough, and school still remained an immense struggle. There wasn't enough time in the day for class, homework, therapy, and all the time I was spending on compulsions for several hours a day. All through sophomore year, I juggled these things, usually sacrificing sleep, which, as a note, is the last thing you should sacrifice when trying to take care of your mental health. But my transcript just shows a string of A's. None of the late nights spent stuck in a ritual or the hours spent rereading and rereading because I was dedicated to get through the assigned material. In the end, I made the difficult decision to take a semester off and do more intensive treatment. This was a difficult decision because being a student is a huge part of my identity. Now on my transcript, it just looks like the odd semester off. I still did independent research during that semester, so I have a grade for that, but my transcript doesn't show how I truly spent that semester. It doesn't show that I spent it doing exposure therapy several hours a day, bravely confronting my fears. It doesn't show that I needed to take that semester off for my own health and well-being. It just shows one line, undergrad research, and a single grade, A. But it was what I needed to be able to continue school and achieve, so I'm grateful for all the support I received from professors who knew. My OCD improved immensely, and I returned to school the following semester as planned. If only I could have foreseen that it still wouldn't be a smooth road ahead. With OCD out of the picture and so much newfound time, depression hit hard. I became a miserable recluse. Yet I continued to push my way through classes and assignments. After all, being a student is who I am. I don't know what else I would be without it. Yet my transcript doesn't show the series of ER visits. It doesn't show pleas to professors to delay an exam because I simply couldn't get up and get myself to study. Me, someone who genuinely loves studying and wants nothing more than to do my best. It just shows a string of A's. The summer before my final year as an undergraduate, I was accepted into the Honors Summer Fellowship program. This was an amazing opportunity to receive funding to spend the summer working on my thesis with a cohort of other students writing theses. I was ecstatic to have been accepted. Still, my mental health continued to crash. I was finally hospitalized at the beginning of the summer, yet I kept this a secret when 2 days later I went on our kickoff camping trip for the fellowship program. All everyone saw was the poised face of achievement. That's what honors students are good at showing. Who knows what anyone else on the trip may have been hiding as well. Thankfully, though, because of really good specialized treatment and immense support from professors and people like my advisor, Dr. Duffy, I've been able to get a lot better these past few months. I'm future-oriented, competent at using coping skills, and have managed to take all my exams on time this semester. Plus, I am so close to making it a semester without needing an ER visit, something that hasn't happened in 2 years. To me, these are the real achievements. Do the grades really matter when I'm succeeding in improving my mental health? Yet at the end of this semester, my transcript will likely again show just a string of A's. It doesn't show all of the hard work that went into avoiding ER visits and another hospitalization. It doesn't show all the hard work I've put into therapy to be able to stay in school and start thriving. It just shows a series of letters that do a great job of making it look like everything was smooth sailing. So what do I wish other people knew about my learning and accomplishment? Mostly I just want people to think twice when they look at a transcript, whether that transcript shows perfect or not so perfect grades. Think twice about what else might have been going on in a student's life. I also want people to be aware that while we may be good at pretending everything is fine, look out for students who might be struggling with their mental health. If something ever seems a little off, rather than jumping to conclusions, just ask. Reach out and ask if they're okay. Is there anything you can do to help? And be supportive if a student does confide in you. I know the professors and mentors I've had who did this have made all the difference. They contributed to the grades on my transcript in more ways than just teaching me material. If we all do this and take care of each other, we will, 1, be healthier, more supported individuals, and 2, we will start to see beyond a string of grades on a transcript. Thank you.
Morgan, thank you. That was very brave and fantastic to hear from your perspective. I know as an instructor, I've been increasingly concerned with these issues, and having some guidance from a student about how it would help them is extremely valuable to me. So thank you again for sharing that with us. We're going to pivot now and hear from somebody who's working very hard behind the scenes to help make what we do in teaching and learning better. Not standing in front of the classroom and lecturing, not sitting in the classroom and attempting to stay awake during the lecturing, but working to help make all the teaching and learning that we do better. Our next speaker is going to be Ben Koester, who's a learning analytics research specialist in the physics department in LS&A, where he's working on projects like Rebuild, which is rethinking models for teaching and learning at scale, particularly in large enrollment introductory STEM courses, and also eCoach, a tool that uses analytics to provide personalized academic guidance to learners within courses. When I asked Ben to share a story with me about his own personal experience with grades, he told me that he most remembers getting a grade in 3rd grade that was a D, and according to the issuer of said grade, one Sister Georgette, D stood for disappointment. But we're glad to see you've recovered, Ben, and welcome you to share your lightning story with us.
Thanks for that introduction, Barry. She also taught me not to speak until spoken to, so I appreciate it. So what would I like to learn more about student achievement and accomplishment is intent and motivation. So in a course, for instance, you're in a course because it's part of your major. Maybe you're in there to fulfill a distribution requirement. Maybe you're in there for pass-fail. You just want exposure to a new discipline or some new ideas. Maybe you want to take something very specific from that course and apply it somewhere else. In each one of these cases, you're in there with a different motivation, maybe with a different intent, right? And so the grade that we hand out, you know, maybe that means something to you, maybe it doesn't. Maybe pushing for a high grade in that class is a strong motivator for you, maybe it's not, right? At the level of a major then, so moving beyond grades, so why did you choose this major that you chose? Did you have it in mind as part of a a means to an end, a final, to get to med school, to get to graduate school, to get to a particular industry? Was it just kind of the path of least resistance? Was it something that was the most challenging major for you? Why are you in here? And the reasons or the motivation that you're choosing that major are also shaping the courses that you take, right, and the path that you take through the university. And kind of then at the highest level for the university is, why are you at the university? Is it to get a major and leave? Is it to expand your horizons, to meet new people, to get new ideas that you hadn't heard before? Is it the social aspect, or the extracurricular aspect? Are you here to do those, and kind of in the grades and the coursework and the major and everything are kind of have a diminished importance? There are people that from across the spectrum that are all doing these things. So as a researcher in these working on these three aspects, I have a few examples out. So one in Ecology that Barry talked about briefly, one of the things we like to do is identify students that are performing not as well as we expected, worse than expected, let's say, in terms of their grades. So they take an exam and we expect them to do better on the exam than they did. Okay, well, why was that? And then, we can ask the question why, but really what we do is we say, okay, you did worse than we expected. Okay, we identify you as someone that we would like to help. But we often don't know what the motivation was or what the intent was for the student taking the course. And that could have an impact on their grade, right? So you can deploy help to a person that doesn't want it or doesn't need it, right? And that's fine. But that depends on knowing their motivation and intent. Another example on what I'd say the major scale, so the degree scale, is we work with learning communities on campus. So, this doesn't exist, but as an example, say there's a stats learning community, a statistics learning community whose intent or whose goal is to help students who want statistics degrees to get those degrees, right? So if we want to help that department understand if what they're doing, if they're successful in what they're doing and helping students to get degrees that wouldn't otherwise get them, we need to identify a control sample on campus, control students on campus whose intent is to get a statistics degree, to get a statistics degree and then to ask if they got degrees later. And these students are specifically students that aren't in the learning community. So we have to identify these students, right? And Michigan is unusual in the sense that you get to admitted to a college in most cases, right? And now only by your sophomore year do you actually declare a major, right? Do you come out and say, yes, I'm a statistics person? And we don't typically do that at Michigan. So we have to infer from maybe your course list or maybe from surveys whether you intended to be a statistics person, right? To get a statistics degree. And from the standpoint of a researcher, this is important to define this sample, right? So we have something to compare to. Right, so we have something to compare to. So what are we doing about this now? So we have, what I said before is, we're looking at trying to identify intent and motivation without having someone telling us every second, yes, I still want to do this major, I still want to do this major, right? We can't sample them every second. So what do we do? Well, we can try to infer from course distributions, right? We can also look at surveys that are in the data warehouse. Most of the work we do is based on things that are in LARC, right? So in the data warehouse. So there are surveys in there. So college entrance surveys, Common App surveys. There are teaching evaluations that students fill out. And these are all great. There's some measure, there's some indication at some point of somebody's motivation. But the surveys, themselves, we've tried to put those to use to infer somebody's intent. What is it that you mean that you want to do here in this course or in this degree? And the surveys themselves, they can evolve over time. The students that take the survey or do the teaching evaluation can be a biased subset, right? So it kind of makes inference to other groups of students difficult, right? And the students themselves, as I said before, the students themselves change over time. Their intents change. They get influenced by different factors over the course of their career, and they make different decisions, right? And we can't, as I said before, we can't resample them over and over and over. So one of the big things I'd like to know is how can we do this? How can we learn more about what our students are intending to do? And enter into a conversation with them about, here's what we think is important for your learning. What do you think is important for your learning? What do you think your goals ought to be? For them to identify these questions, and it's a big university, there are many students. Can we have a conversation with each student about what they want to do and what they want to get out of this? Well, it's difficult, right? But it's kind of a goal I feel like it'd be interesting to push toward, And that's all I had to say.
Thank you very much, Ben. For our next speaker, we're moving back to a faculty perspective, and I had my first encounter with Mika LaVaque-Manty at an event organized by a doctoral student we knew in common called How I Write, and he described his process, and at the end of it I thought, I want to get to know this guy. He sounds really interesting, and I was not disappointed and have not ever been disappointed since. If you're looking into something related to teaching and learning here at Michigan, there's a pretty good chance you'll find Mika there ahead of you. He has been engaged in thinking about academic innovation broadly and at working very hard to put ideas related to academic innovation into practice in his courses. He is an Arthur F. Thurnau professor. He's currently the director of the LS&A Honors Program, and he just wrapped up more than a year of leadership helping us imagine the campus of the future as a bicentennial professor. And all that is in addition to his day job as a political scientist. Mika wants you to know that he spent a wayward youth in Finland obsessed with his own grades, but the most valuable and eye-opening grade he ever received was an F on a calculus midterm in college. Mika, I welcome you to share your talk with us.
I hate grading. Not evaluating student work, but being the anti-Santa Claus, a disappointment delivery mechanism. Maybe that's why I feel the way about grades in general I do. When I became a professor almost 20 years ago and started teaching advanced undergrads, I was amazed at how much students learn. I had taught a lot as a grad student, but it was mainly freshmen. They were good, but the difference between freshmen and seniors was amazing. In terms of the things I cared about, analytical abilities, writing, and verbal articulacy, the seniors showed to me that students really do learn in college. There was variance, of course. Every year you encounter amazing freshmen who make you wonder if there's really anything you can teach them. Alex here, whom I've known since his first day of freshman year, is one of those students. There are always a few seniors who miraculously manage to survive college without being touched by much learning or education. But there's a difference. Among the freshmen, the Alexes are exception, even in the LSA Honors Program. And among the seniors, the majority of the students will impress anyone. So, yay, students learn in college. When I discovered that, I wanted to figure out how much of it happened in my courses. And I had no idea. I still mainly don't. Most of the instruments we use evaluate the students on the competencies or knowledge we care about. Fine, but that has nothing to do with learning, which is what I'm interested in providing. So what counts as evidence of the learning I was so impressed by? For me, the key aspects of it are the ability to make a compelling argument, whether in writing or speaking. That requires some knowledge, sure, and it was interesting to see that political science seniors know a lot more about politics and political science than freshmen. But the knowledge, which is really just information, is not the main thing. The main thing is classifying information and then doing something with it. Recognizing patterns, drawing inferences, and spelling them out in ways that others get it. So for me, college learning is about learning judgment. That may sound kind of lame, but if I put it in German, where there's always an octosyllabic word available, I can say it's about Urteilskraft. Okay, so that isn't just about long German words, but the German makes it clear that judgment is a capacity, eine Kraft. It's something you can learn, but it's also something that's totally non-trivial to learn. So how in the heck do I figure out whether students in my courses have learned to practice their capacity for judgment? I do try to design my courses to foster such learning. I care about writing, but none of you are going to become a president or a millionaire by writing political theory papers on Thomas Hobbes. But you might become a powerful writer if you learn when to use one particular genre and when another, for example. And by powerful writer, I don't mean winning the National Book Award, but communicating persuasively in whatever field you are in. So my assignments try to put it on the students to think about what they're talking about, who they're talking to, and with what kind of language. But I still don't know whether anything I assess reflects what students learned in my course. Maybe they figured it out in English 125, or from their parents, or on an internship. So what I really wish I knew about student learning is how to tell whether my students have learned to solve another puzzle or a new problem. So I'm grateful to Barry here for teaching me that famous distinction. Puzzles are things that have unique solutions. They are those things you can buy in doodad crap stores where you try to figure out how to get this thingamajig over that thingamajig or something like that. They are valuable and can be fun for a little bit, but they get boring. Problems, on the other hand, are challenges that don't have unique solutions. My fear is that we're still mainly in the puzzle business. Now, our students do have real problems. How to manage this whole damn college thing, how to pass classes while mom is dying, this was an advice this week, or how to graduate in 3 years because parents are broke, this is an advice pretty much every week, how to focus on classes if Richard Spencer is coming to campus. But we don't measure any of that. Heck, we disparage the whiners. But we do actually have some mechanisms for tracking the kinds of skills we care about. Close to home for me are honors theses. They are among the few systems we've connected to the credentializing economy that actually evaluate a student's ability to solve a bunch of interesting problems involving intellectual issues, workflow management, personality management, and creativity. I'd like more of our students to take on honors theses. But even more, I'd like us to think of more ways for our students to demonstrate those skills and have us evaluate and recognize them. I still might not be able to pinpoint what a student learned in my course, but it might matter less because the A I gave to recognize something I care about and which might be a result of learning in my course or parental investment or something else would matter less. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mika. I'm told there are close to 45,000 students here on this campus. I'll take their word for it because I haven't met them all yet. But once in a while, I meet one that really makes an impression on me, and it was at an event hosted by the Office of Academic Innovation where I met Alex Wilf, who shared with me some of his really interesting meta-thinking about his own learning, which impressed me deeply. And when Melinda Matney asked me for a suggestion of a student who might help contribute to our thinking about learning in the context of the way we think about grading, I thought, oh, Alex would be pretty interesting. And luckily he said yes. He's a junior studying computer science with an interest, and I think as you'll hear, more than just an interest in complex systems. And he's been working on a system of his own to more effectively visualize and analyze hierarchical systems, such as the kind you might use to manage your own thought processes as they develop in a field called invariant. Alex, I welcome you to join us up here and look forward to hearing your story.
Thanks, everyone. This is a real honor. Thank you, Barry. So I want to talk really quickly, actually not about invariant, but about something even broader. I have 3 goals in college. I'm just going to start broad. So I want to become a better pure problem solver, a better decision maker, and better at something I'm going to call getting it across the line. So to dive really briefly into each one of these, pure problem solving. I see that as making myself a better abstract thinker, being able to take in a lot of pieces of disparate information and form structures that I can use to relate to one another and engage with complex ideas. Thinking about decision making, I want to reshape the way I approach problems, understand the way that my cognitive biases and other impediments in my intuitive processes influence my judgment, and become a better rational decision maker. Finally, this kind of bundle, catch-all, getting things across the line. This is what I see as the essence of taking what I learn and the quality that I'm able to bring to my classes and transferring it into projects that aren't dictated by a grade or a strict incentive system. And this is what I really want to focus on in my talk today. The last piece of background that I want to give everyone is that I see my time being divided 3 real ways. The difficulty of my classes, the achievement standard that I hold myself to in those classes, and the third one is the extracurriculars that I involve myself in. Like Morgan mentioned, if you look at my transcript, all you'll see probably is a string of high letter grades. But I think that what's hidden behind that is all the sacrifices that I've made and the way that I've had to trade off between these three categories. So that's what I really want to talk about today. So the last thing I need to say is that when push came to shove, I've always prioritized first my achievement in my classes, doing well in what I take on. Second, taking hard classes, making sure that I'm expanding my thinking as much as I can while I'm here. And then third, my extracurricular involvement. So why is this relevant? The question that I was asked to address is what do I wish people knew about my accomplishment? And I'm just going to tell you a really quick story. So it was mid-September, and I'm on the Glee Club executive board, and we were planning the biggest event in our history. It was 11:30, and everyone was tired, and we were all eating Panda Express. I think you can imagine. And I had to walk out because I had an exam the next day. And the whole walk home, I was thinking, is this optimal for my learning? Would I have learned more by staying in this meeting, by engaging with these smart, interested people who are passionate about our community, or would I have learned more from my compiler's exam the next morning? So this is the question that's kind of been going around in my mind. And then when Barry asked me to give my thoughts on this question, it's the first thing I thought of. I'm going to give another example. I was teetering on the brink of being able to manage my schoolwork this semester with a lot of schoolwork and a lot of outside commitments, and then I got in a bike crash. And the first thing to go was my beloved personal project Invariant that I put so much time and energy to. I had to start missing deadlines that I had set, and when I started missing deadlines, the people that I was asking to complete their deadlines to me started missing their deadlines, and the whole thing came down like a house of cards. Luckily, our funding is continued through the next semester, so I have one more shot at this. But I think I'm going to go into the next semester with a reshaped set of priorities. So beyond this question of what have the sacrifices that I made and how have they impacted my learning in this space of getting things across the line, trying to achieve the same quality that I bring to school as I bring to outside projects, I think some of the people that I respect most and that I look up to most at Michigan are the kind of people who are amazing at this last category. And I want to tell you about a couple of them today. So the first one is Teddy Gottfredson. He's in the Glee Club with me. And over the last 6 months, Teddy has been planning one of the biggest events in the Glee Club's history, the Bicentennial Male Chorus Symposium. It was hundreds and hundreds of hours of work on his part, and thanks to grants from the university and a lot of work from other Glee Club members, we were able to pull it off, and it was an incredible event. And through it, I saw Teddy become an amazing leader. And now I just know he's the kind of guy, if you ask him to get something done, it's done. It's done well, it's done quickly. Another one is Matthew Tice. He's my roommate, and he is one of the smartest people I know, but also one of the most committed people I know to extracurriculars. And the learning that he gets won't show up on his transcript. It won't show up in his class choice. It won't show up in his achievement. But to give you a really quick example, so he's the project lead on one of the big Blue Lab teams and the head of the Hyperloop team. And we decided that we wanted to put a projector up in our house. Pretty college thing, I'd say. And we didn't want to block the window, right? It's really important to have light when you're in your living room. And he's like, oh, I'll just build an arch. I'm like, okay, build an arch. We'll see, right? The next day, it was not only an arch in our living room, it was a beautiful, stained, finished arch with like bracketed supports. It was gorgeous, and the next day we were watching movies on the projector. So these are the kind of people, really quickly, thinking back on my goals, that I wish that I had been able to devote more time to this getting things done, getting things across the line, to be more like them. And I think that this is the kind of thing that doesn't show up in any transcript. It's the kind of thing that doesn't show up in my personal website or anything. If you looked at everything, you'd think that I was a great executor. But from the inside, I know that I have a huge amount of difficulty transferring the same quality that I bring to school as I bring to outside projects. And I think that that's going to become really relevant in the workforce when I'm asked to do things and take initiative on things. I'm not able to take as much initiative as I would if I had a strict incentive structure. So the last thing I want to leave you with is a couple of my brief observations about the way that these three systems have interacted in terms of the incentives that I've been guided by. I think incentives are great. I like incentive systems. They really push me and they make me learn. But I found that the incentive systems between hard classes, doing well in classes, and involving yourself in extracurriculars are not always aligned. And I just want to propose it to this community of much more educated and interesting people than me to think about how we can better align these systems so that people like me don't have to make that trade-off, and people like Matthew don't have to graduate with a low GPA. So thank you. I'll be around if anyone wants to talk more about this. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alex. Well, we've heard from students who have shared with us how they try to balance all the varying demands that represent the things they're choosing to pursue, and how they fold into that their social, emotional, and cognitive development, a big challenge. We've heard from faculty who've shared with us the challenge of trying to figure out how to support a wide range of learners, how to guide people, how to, when you must, grade people, and how to interpret all that information when trying to make decisions about things like admissions to programs. And now we are going to close with a talk from someone who has made her focus for the last several years helping our students find their path out of college and into experiences beyond our walls. Molly Heaton is currently the Talent Identification Manager for PricewaterhouseCoopers, with a focus on our students here at the University of Michigan. And prior to assuming this role, she worked in the Career Development Office within the Ross School of Business. And from each of these perspectives, Molly has seen the importance of thinking beyond grades in terms of helping students land internships and jobs that are the right fit for them. She also wants you to know that her dedication to this college runs deep. She has a 7-month-old yellow lab named Brady. It's named after a certain quarterback, although unlike its namesake, Brady the dog is better at catching balls than throwing them. Molly?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here this afternoon. A little bit different than the speakers that you've heard that are all, pretty heavily involved in the academic arena here at the University of Michigan. As Barry said, I'm currently the recruiter for PwC at the University of Michigan for undergraduate and specialty master's programs. I think I have a unique position, at being in industry coming from higher education, previously serving as a career counselor at the business school here at the University of Michigan. This background and my general interest in student development gives me that unique perspective that others in my position at other companies, at the Amazons, the Deloittes, the Medtronics of the world, maybe don't have. And I think it's a perspective that others in my position hiring your students really need to have. This perspective is that we need to look beyond grades. There is a lot to a student, and you heard from two, that goes beyond the grades. That's more to them than that 4.0 or that 3.0, or even lower than that. That get overlooked throughout the process because, as employers without a background in higher education, we see we have a 3.3 grade point average cutoff, and that's really it. And they don't look beyond that to see what else a student may have. So what do I want my fellow employers to know about student accomplishments that go beyond the grades? One would be a student's campus involvement. So to me, campus involvement, community involvement means that they're dedicated, that they're passionate, and that they're going to get involved in our organizations, which is becoming more and more important. That they've had work experience or experiential learning experiences, that they've been able to apply what they've learned in the classroom outside of the classroom. That they have passions, that they're thinking, values, goal-oriented, future-oriented people. As well as that they have additional skills, courses in Excel and data analytics, that they're staying up on trends in whichever industry that they're pursuing, that they're able to speak to those. That's all stuff that doesn't come out on a transcript. That's stuff that comes out on resumes that we see every day. It comes out in student conversations, but it doesn't come out in the 3.0 or the 4.0 that you see in an application. Last year, I saw over 2,000 resumes from the University of Michigan alone, without the additional 8 schools that I go to. That's not unusual to PwC. I'm sure there are organizations that recruit more students than we do every year that see more. If you consider your admissions department here, either the LS&A undergraduate or the master's graduate program admissions, they're seeing huge numbers, and the opportunity to look individually at each resume, at each transcript, at each person individually to get what grades don't tell you is hard. So what I would like myself and other employers to get out of grades is more of a holistic student, not just how they're doing in classes, whether they're getting an A, a B, or a C, but how they're doing as a well-rounded individual and how that will translate then into my organization. I want to learn how I can know that a 4.0 was difficult, was a hard road traveled, and that a 2.5 isn't a lack of intelligence. Maybe there was a personal reason or something that happened. So overall, what I would like a student accomplishment to be known in kind of the hiring industry is that it's more than just a GPA cutoff, and that there is a lot more that people contribute to an organization. So if transcripts and if grades can start telling me what they're involved in outside of the classroom, it would be a huge help, because I know I'm missing out on students that are pretty great, that just don't have that grade cutoff. Thank you.